Jen, we're here on a podcast that might be yours. It might be mine. We might use this for social media. We have no idea where this is going to go, but I'm excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. How are you? It doesn't look like the apocalypse at your house.
We had apocalyptic conditions a few days ago, but they are clearing as of now. The sun has returned to its normal hue of yellow from its blood red origin over the weekend. And I can now open my windows and not smell the smell of smoke. So I'm really in a good space over here where I am. I know that you, however, are probably not in quite as good of a space because you're more downwind of the fire itself.
I am in intermittent apocalyptic conditions. So we get the varying sunshine. We'll get like a little bit of clarity. And then we're getting like swirling winds of ash and blood red. But it's beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. But you know, it is what it is. Nature's doing its thing. And
there's a lot to appreciate. There's a lot to mourn and grieve, but there's also a lot to appreciate. So it's funny how it brings up both sides of that coin.
I know. Well, I know today we were going to talk about a lot of different things, and our unifying topic today is the evolution of sport culture. I know for both of us in our own respect and our own fields, we're trying to move the needle with our content, with our work with athletes, with groups, as well as with our conversations with allies, kind of like the one that we're going to have today. So we're going to be all over the place, but it's going to have this unifying topic of this evolution of sport culture. I know that we're excited to talk about some of the recent hot topics of the BLM movement, as well as the compensation of NCAA athletes. We might get into that, and also fair pay for women in sports. And there's some new stuff that's coming up on that I read about it. But I think first it would be really cool to give the audience a quick background. Again, which audience? We don't know yet.
We don't know. So we'll both give a bit.
The audience, the viewers,
we'll both give a little
allies.
background. And I want to add a little, like a 1% tweak or a 1% add, I should say, is it's this evolution of the culture of sport. And it's also this evolution of the athlete within it. Like it's really so much of the role of athlete has been in a traditional state, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but like how is that changing and who's stepping into that role and how is life changing for athletes as the culture is shifting? It's kind of a chicken or an egg.
I dig it. All right, well, let's jump in for you. When you think of like how are you doing that within your own practice today? How are you trying to shift that evolution of not only the sport, but the athlete first, right? Because enough of those athletes make change in the collective.
Exactly. I think for me, it's all about life skills. You know, we have so many amazing sports skills, and we spend hours and hours and hours of dedicated effort, mental, physical, you name it, we're doing it to just hone those like crazy. And the life skill component of things that people get when they, you know, and some of this is a little generational specific. I think youth athletes have a little bit harder road of this, but in general, if you've been busy being an athlete for the majority of your life, then a lot of the experiences that you might have built a certain type of life skill to deal with have been taken care of for you, or they've been facilitated by other people. Absolutely. Things as small as, you know, planning travel and managing your money and, you know, being able to create a schedule for yourself, being able to manage change and what happens when things like COVID hits the fan and you're like, well, now what am I supposed to do? And so I think for me, the company that I have is built on helping athletes learn how much more than an athlete they actually are. And I know we all know that, but giving them life skills that go beyond those sports skills, really offering specific training to hone those life skills as much as you hone those sports skills so that you are emotionally ready with a really high level of emotional intelligence. Your choice ability is way up there on the scale of human consciousness and your ability to really integrate your brain and your body. And that no matter what happens, you can be in charge of everything, even though you've come from an experience that's really facilitated where other people are in charge of everything.
I dig it. You know, I think as I've been having these conversations the last like week or so, I think my tie into that is that I had this realization a while back, and it speaks exactly to what you're talking about. And, you know, for me, as an athlete, learning how to, you know, I was a work hard. I was a work.
Oh, yes.
I still am.
Most of us.
But yeah, like that's what we do. Oh, put your head down, work your butt off,
Go.
never stop, no days off, sacrifice it all, that Rocky mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like as I got out of sport and well, as I got out of formal competition and I moved to more of an enjoyable, recreational, fitness loving, endurance sport chasing, master of all the things, because that's what I wanted to do. When I got out of that, I started to really learn how to optimize mental, physical, and spiritual stuff, and start to navigate and start to see that old strategy, that old philosophy of break your body and just push was no longer cutting it.
Exactly. Quick check. Does that work anywhere? Let's just do a quick check with each other. Let's do it. Let's do the put your nose down and go. Does that work in personal relationships?
I haven't seen it be successful for anyone.
Does that work with, I don't know, any other profession that you should want to get involved? If you just put your nose down and go, it may or may not apply depending on the work, right? Like to your education, put your nose down and go. Maybe, or you might fall asleep in your books because you have no life balance. Like, where else does that work? It works in sports. It ain't a broken system. And I think it's really important to tell people, like, this thing that you've done for years, it works. And we're not slamming it. We're not dogging it. Like, it works. But when you leave the structure that you used it in, does it still work?
Well, let me tell you, Jen, it doesn't, because I can tell you what happened to me.
Ooh.
You know, let me tell you about
Let me tell
you about it, Jen.
Yes.
So, you know, I write this book on how to optimize your mind and body and spirit and integrate all the things and, you know, change the culture of sport to be this, from this train hard to working smarter, or, you know, like still work hard, but you work smarter and it's, you know, a lot better results. And it was so ingrained, it was so patterned in me trying to spearhead and make all the impact, write all the books, work with all the athletes, do all the things. Guess what, Jen?
I think I know what you're going to say.
Guess
what did you discover?
I discovered that I burned my ass out.
Oh, you did it again.
And I didn't know.
Exactly.
I'm literally teaching athletes how to do all these things, and I had made the shift myself. But in this completely other thing that you'd think that it would have transferred, guess what? It didn't. And I was thinking, like, and I even say it sometimes, I'm like, all of the things you learn in sport are directly transferable to life. They're not.
No,
they're not.
It's a language.
There's a connector.
It's a language. It's a process. We need a bridge, people. Athletes need advocates like us to build a bridge to help them cross from the world of sport to the world where you get to love sport, but you don't get to do it like you used to. I mean, you need that bridge. And kudos to you for seeing and having the awareness that you're like, wait a second, I thought I killed this habit. What? I did it again? And you'll do it another 5 times because it's ingrained. We are trained, people. You have to choose. I know, I'm sorry. Maybe I want to cry too.
I don't want to. I just want to learn the lesson. I want to be conscious, and I don't want to make. I just want to learn the lesson. I'm trying to learn the lesson. I'm doing the lesson now.
But here's the thing. Every time it comes up, it doesn't mean you didn't learn the lesson. It really doesn't. It just means that there's a piece of the lesson that you're still holding on to. There's a piece of the pattern that's still more patterned than it is chosen. And across time, you can learn to essentially like decouple, right? Like pull these threads apart. It's like the spaghetti in the pot that gets stuck together. You got to work to like peel off a noodle here and there.
That is the best analogy I've ever heard for this.
Otherwise, you're just stuck. You're just stuck. Yeah. Like you wish you had loosened up and like spread out when you cooked in the boiling water, but you didn't. You got thrown into the boiling water of life. Your stuff's all stuck together because it's always been that way. And if you don't choose to change the pattern and find that bridge, or find people like you and me to help you find the bridge, I'm not being a doomsdayer here. We both come from experience. It's harder, people. It's harder to live life without playing the way you used to if you don't actually do the work to cross that bridge, separate out all that stuff that you've been trained to keep together.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that I can now see that and have that experience, right? And I know you as well, right? That you can have that experience, you can build that bridge and start to decouple. You can start to pull those things apart and then again live from a more conscious place and a more chosen place. You know, it's kind of interesting now when and I also have conversations with other athletes, right? We almost we have that whole glory days scenario, right? Like, oh, I used to train for hours and I can't wait to get back to how I used to. No, we don't need to. You don't need to. You need to do something different now that serves where you are now. And like, I can understand the glorifying, the work, the effort, everything. I can understand that part. Mm-hmm. But understanding that although like dead and gone, here we are in present moment, there's a new, better strategy. I think that also speaks to the known versus the unknown. We can look backwards and we can say, oh my goodness, it was so great. Oh my gosh, I know what it's like over here. And now I want to create from this place that I used to create, like this other thing. And I want to bring that into the future. And the reality is that the unknown holds so much more and so much greater, you know, whether it's like results, vitality, happiness, all of those things. But a lot of times we look into that past.
Well, absolutely. I mean, from a physiological place, you go with what you know. It's more metabolically efficient. From a psychological place, we go with what we know because we have positive emotional associations. That's what you're talking about, right? It's like the psych speak is you have these positive emotional associations that go with certain experiences. So they get paired in your mind and your brain releases all sorts of beautiful chemicals like dopamine. And
these feel so good.
Oh. Yeah, that makes you crave it. That's the chemical that tells your brain, you know what, even though it just took me like 3 years to get to the point that I just got and my fingers are bleeding and my toes are raw and my heart is broken because I lost more than I won, I'm still going to do it again. And that's those brain, again and again and again. And that's those brain chemicals that get released. So yes, there is a sense of the unknown and there is the body's response to patterns and how we're trained. So if you want to face the unknown in a new way, like you said, you used to face it with your old shtick, you better learn a new shtick. You better retrain, right? You got to retrain yourself to approach the same old thing because we've been facing the unknown forever and always will, but you got to come to it from a different place because the old place was good for the old structure, but now you're where you are here, right, in the present.
I love it. So let's take that to where we are now because we're seeing this now I'm
so excited about where we are now.
I know, me too. I know. Enough of the past. Let's go right here.
You intro.
Okay. I'm about to throw the ball to you. It's all good. I'm gonna set us up. I'm gonna let you run with it. But yeah, so let's talk about where we are now because we're starting to see an uprise. We're starting to see player advocacy. We're starting to see leagues come together. We're starting to see people, teams. We're starting to see these huge shifts that are super duper exciting. And it is something that we have never seen before. Like talking about the unknown. We are in the unknown. You know, we don't need to talk about COVID. Gets talked about enough. But COVID gave us this sense of anything can happen at any time. And now we're in this cool space where the world has changed and not just one league, not just one team, not just like the ownership, not just X, Y, and Z, literally the entire world, an entire couple of generations, however many generations are present now. All of these things are shifting and moving. So let's talk about what's going on in sport right now.
Well, I think I'm going to do a little COVID nod, okay? The biggest gift of COVID for me, to all athletes that I don't know if y'all have seen it yet, so let me just like throw it out there as one woman's perspective. It made you face your fear. And I mean that in a very deep and personal way. You know why? Because raise your hand if you lost your sport. Everybody's hands go up. Now, put them down. One more question. Raise your hand if that's the one thing you would have previously avoided at all costs. Because previously, we all would have thought if we lost our sport, that was the end of the world. Our identities, our hearts, how we live life is all wrapped, our communities, it's all wrapped up. So a lot of times athletes unconsciously, subconsciously, we operate on this agenda of, I got to protect my slot. I got to make sure I get here. I got to make sure I don't get cut. I got to make sure I get to play. And that fear is always there for us. I can't get injured, right? It's always there. Exactly. Yeah. Hair standing up on my arms. Okay?
Every day, Jen, every day.
Is that if that's not the truth of an athlete's life, I don't know what is. We live in fear of losing our sport. And what COVID did was be like, all right, let me see. Did you want to? No, sorry.
Oh, you
He's
had
gone.
plans? Oh, you had plans?
You had a plan.
No.
You wanted to. Oh, you got a to-do list. You got the. Oh no, sorry. And here's the best part. You're like, lady, how is this a gift? Flip it. Where's the gift, Jen? Because you're still here. Because you didn't die, because you didn't totally lose your mind, although I'm sure it was horrific, don't get me wrong, but you figured it out. You found a way. And on the other side of finding a way is a strength you didn't know you had. And I feel like something about that trigger, about us not having to fear losing our sport even a little bit anymore, makes it easier to say, boy, I wanted to stand up for this a long time ago. And now I can. Yep. Right? There's a permission that's present and a fear that's already been faced that I think makes it a little less scary to stand up. Now that's not necessarily conscious, but if y'all raise your hands, then you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
And I think that's very present at different levels from the youth athlete. You know, I see it a lot at the youth athlete level of people freaking out and trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, who am I without volleyball? Who am I without, you know, the identity piece of that? And then actually being like, oh my gosh, I actually have time to paint, or I have time to do all these other things, or, oh, now I have to learn how to manage my own time myself, right? Like all of these different things are very present, you know, for the professional athlete who is always on the go, who is always trying to protect against injury, who is always working to make sure that they're on the court or on the field or healthy, or, you know, all of these things that go into that.
The work.
All of that, you know, and then the social media of like, oh, I have to be doing the content and I have all the sponsors and I have to do these things and I have to be traveling and guess what?
Where's my Post-it?
Oh, you have a family you want to go see? Oh, here we go. You know, like it's, and all the way up, we see athletes affected at every single level in different ways. And I think that, you know, the initial fear response and the initial freak out of everything has, you know, it's been months now, so people have adapted, you know, like you would imagine that humans could do.
Exactly.
You know?
We're built for change. We just don't look like we're very good at it, but we are built for it, technically speaking.
And, you know, it's really cool to be, I mean, we try to do this with our players, right? As coaches, we try to, you know, do things that throw off our players all the time. And, you know, and we build that in. Guess what? This was a universe, Earth building this in that's affected everybody in this really beautiful way. And I think it's been an incredible gift in a lot of ways. And, you know, not to downplay any of the financial hardship, the economic results, or, you know, impacts, the emotional challenges, you know, the depressive episodes, you know, like all of these things, although, you know, not to take away from any of the hardships that are going on or downplay those, but really you know, even all of those things are beautiful gifts, you know, and that's gonna register different for different people. And I'm not here saying everything is a gift, and I'm here to tell you what the gift is. You'll figure out your own gift.
You're pointing to a growth mindset, right? You're pointing to a growth mindset to say that the funny thing about light is that you can see it better in the dark, right? Like it's so bright. Light is so bright when you're in the dark. And I feel like there's an opportunity in the darkness that that we acknowledge is the challenge of this. There's so many opportunities that you've mentioned, whether it be personal initiative or just getting better at organizing your life or seeing your family. Doesn't matter what it is. There's so many opportunities hidden in that. So my question is, we don't even have to answer it necessarily, but there's something about there's that. and this shift in an athlete's experience on a day-to-day. And then when it came back, the one thing you'd think that is like, oh, the mecca of all, right? Pardon that expression if it's not PC, to get a better expression, that is like the ideal, right? The one thing that is the one thing you want to happen is for your sport to come back, for you to play. And the fans and the organizations and the institutions and everybody wants it back. And at that pivotal moment, someone stands up and says, I'm sorry, there's more important things going on.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the college athletes who said our health and wellness matters. Oh my God, I wanted to hug every one of those children. Sorry, not children. I know you're young men and women, but I'm old, so I wanted to hug you.
Young adults.
There you go. You're young adults. I just couldn't believe like the birth of solidarity that began to grow, and then culminating in the events of late the last few weeks, where ends of seasons are postponed and games are stopped and athletes are on the news standing up saying all of this is really important and we love what we do, but there's something more important that we want you to know about.
And I think historically, it's been a very difficult thing for athletes to either cultivate their voice in that. I mean, even as 10 years ago when I was competing in college, there was this mindset of, and it was something that I had to learn because I'm very much an individual. But guess what? You're not an individual. You represent the university. You represent a team that's much greater than yourself.
Yes.
And although you matter, you don't. Because how you walk into a classroom, you are representing everybody else. So guess what? I know that you want to be outside the box, Deanna. And like, even for me, 10, 12 years ago, like sexuality, I was in South Texas and I am very much a gay woman.
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the first thing that people know about me,
Mm-hmm.
but it is definitely very much a part of who I am. It's definitely like not number two, but
right.
like it's
well, and in that
line.
environment, did you have the openness to be you?
Not always. And that's part of like authenticity, right? So even 10 years ago in D1 culture, I was having to pull back parts of my personality or parts of my authenticity as a human.
Yeah, who you are.
And be like, oh, well, I represent the volleyball team, so I can't talk about that I have a girlfriend who I'm madly in love with. Like stuff like that, where it's like that's a core part of your life is somebody who's in your, somebody who you're partnered with, or God, it was like college, so I was probably not a partner, but like a girlfriend. I mean,
I was unpartnered, but I was, doing what people do in college. But the point is, like, you're pointing to the risk, right? You're pointing to the risk that athletes take in speaking up. And you're also pointing to this complicated web that I think the audience, the sort of, you might have played sports, or maybe you've never played sports and you just love them and you're a fan. The audience of sports isn't aware of this complicated web of obligations that athletes navigate. And you're right. Their obligation to self is generally guided by keep me in my sport, right? Like back to the beginning of our conversation. And what do I need to do to stay in my sport? And if you had stepped out of line in that environment, what kind of repercussion would it have for your ability to play?
Yep.
And is your ability to play linked to any of the financial institution or your personal finances as far as scholarship or things like that? And so the stakes get really high really fast. And that's for like D1, right? So which is big enough in and of itself, but then if you go to like a professional level where people are spending millions of dollars on you as an investment, you are a commodity.
Yeah. That is your livelihood, your ability to provide for your family. Those professional athletes, a lot of times, are taking care of A
A
long
lot
list
more
of
people than who
family.
lives in their house. Let's put it that way. A
Exactly.
lot more people than who lives in their house. So you got an
Mhm.
obligation to and a responsibility and a lot of times a really esteemed respect, but it comes down to I use this word and so please don't get offended, but I feel like athletes a lot of time operate in servitude to their sport. Now
Mm.
that doesn't that's not the same as like the slavery word, but like servitude to their sport. We are servants of an industry. We are servants of a sport. We serve ourselves and we chose this path. It's not a story of victimization I'm talking about here.
Absolutely
I'm,
not.
I'm talking about a story of something that we chose, but the service, the price we pay to be in service of our sport and get to play it is really high. And that integrated crazy web of obligations is put at risk the second that you even consider putting your toe towards the line, let alone outside it.
And
So
we
the
saw it in 2016, right? That I think
yes.
that was probably 2016, I think. And I'm sure somebody will comment and be like, "No, Deanna, it actually happened." Okay,
I'm
great.
sure it happened before that, yes. But God
Please
bless
tell me.
Kaepernick for
Please,
for
but
being
that's
so public.
the right for that is the most public and the most recent public
Yeah,
um story and representation, and very, very public, where we saw him lose his job.
oh, absolutely. All the way up
We saw
from
him lose his job.
the fan. Well, and he said it. He called it. He knew athletes know what they're going to put at risk. Other people don't quite understand because you might not be in the pool with us, but we want you to know athletes put everything at risk when they stand up to use their voice the way they are now. That's what makes it. It's already significant, but it makes it miraculously significant. Like I could not be more enamored and proud and just I can't even think enough words to say you guys are amazing. You found your voice. You stood up and said, I'm going to take this risk because there's something that is worth it. But it's a huge risk for athletes to stand up and speak out. And Kaepernick knew it. He said, if I lose my football, if I lose my team, if I lose, I don't have the quote in front of me. But, it says, like, if I lose it all, if they take it from me, at least I'll know I did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's a huge, and he lost in the short term. I think in the long run, he would agree he made the right decision, and he's really evolved where he is as a person and what he does with his time and his life. He's a free agent now. We'll see where it goes from here. But it's just that risk is almost unspeakable. And it's the thing we've always avoided for so long. And that's what makes it so amazing. The collective gathering of energy and voices that's present now, they're all willing to take that risk and lose it all.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting that now athletes are almost humanized. Imagine that, humans. They they it's crazy. They're not just machines
No.
that are here for your entertainment and
Yeah.
for you to bet on.
Or they're not
Like,
an investment that you've made to help your organization. I mean, they are all those things. They
yes,
are.
yes,
They're a
yes,
source of
yes, yes.
entertainment. They're a thing you invest in. They're all, whether you're a college or a pro sports organization or even the local flipping softball league, like you're still investing in something that's going to push your league and the name and the numbers and the reputation, right? But this is why we go back to the same hashtag. The first thing you said was, what is this work that you do? And it's always hashtag more than an athlete.
Yep.
Like you are more than an athlete, and we've forgotten it as a culture, and that's the growth, right? You were saying there's this evolution of culture. You're more than an athlete. I have to hold myself back from yelling it because you're more than an athlete, and that's the culture. I think one of the big culture shifts that's happening. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I'm also seeing from an audience perspective, I hear this sometimes, and even in my own family, sometimes we've God bless my family. They have, they speak freely, and we have these beautiful exploratory conversations. So there's nothing that's like set in stone, right? Where it's we speak openly and then we explore the topic. So
Yeah.
we can do that in a healthy way. But in my family, like I have heard the words of, and I'll relate this to corporate stuff as well, but like they're athletes, like that's their job. They signed up for this. I don't want to
Yes.
hear about their political meow, meow, meow. I don't want to hear about meow, meow, meow. Like, that's not their role. And I was like, well, that's not historically their role. And that's what we're seeing, and that hasn't been the role. And not to say that it shouldn't be, or that it now is, right? Like, again, it's part of the evolution of that. But we have an audience, we have a captive audience that has been wanting all of these sports to come back because they need something to distract themselves from their own growth and their own evolution, or, bring them together as community, whatever, no judgments, wherever you're at with that, that's fine. But we have an audience who doesn't understand, or who just doesn't relate those things, that are like, your entertainment, you work for an organization, and that's the expectation of, just like if my dad gave the example of, I represent the company that I work for. So my X, Y, and Z views, my X, Y, these views, they don't belong at work. This is their work. And I said, yes, kind of, but all of these other things, like that has been the expectation. What if that were to shift? That has previously been the expectation and how things have operated in, corporate culture. But times are a-changing, and maybe that's a good thing. And maybe that's a good thing to be able to have these open discussions, and especially about topics that, frankly, probably need a little brush up.
And I mean, I hear those comments. I get them too, as well. That's why I said it's like, it's not I referred to a video. It's not a victim story when I say that I believe athletes need advocacy, and I believe athletes need to be supported in their roles. What other profession devotes their life to something and sacrifices their body to it? And I'll add the third one, is done by the time before they're 30. What other profession has the other 2/3 of their life to live, and really more, beyond, because life expectancies are like through the roof. So let's say 3/4, right? So 2/3 to 3/4 of your life is left to live when you're done with sport, and you've sacrificed your mind and your body to the effort. What other profession does that? Let's just brainstorm a bit. I get one random thing that pops into my head. What do you get?
Maybe military, and that's all.
That's what I get too.
That's what you get.
I get military. When you say military, because of our, has the apocalyptic situation, I get firefighters, right? Like fire and police. There's a certain amount of laying your life on the line for that. And what happens to these people in those professions when they're done? What kind of pensions and healthcare systems and social networks do we have to support people who put their life and their body and their mental, emotional health on the line for their jobs? We have the VA. We have, I could go on and on with the list. What do we have for athletes? If they're such an important source of your entertainment and your happiness, and they're such a huge driver of big business and big money in a variety of ways, from endorsements to filling seats, don't you think they're worth a little more than just that's their job, they signed up for it?
Absolutely.
There's a shortcoming there. There's a short-sightedness, and I'm sorry to call you on it if you're offended, but seriously, you would never say that about someone in a service job, in a service industry. And athletes are in service of a sport. They're in service of you. They're in service of this organization. Back to that complicated web of obligation. And they deserve to be supported, even when what they have to say is not what you might want to hear.
Absolutely. I think that even ties in the equal pay, right? Or even and not even equal pay. We'll just call it the pay conversation around women in sport, right? Like, whatever, call it what you want it. There is obviously, especially for the U.S. women's national team, which, Luna has really stepped up. We've had organizations who have come up and said, yeah, we're not okay with this, and we see that, and we're gonna make an effort to either sponsor, I don't know how their financial
support,
structure
help,
is.
right?
Support, yeah, and they're getting that, but it's that bigger conversation of there is, like, even they're in service of their sport and they are not being compensated like
during the sport. I'm talking about
during the sport. This is
I'm talking about the after the sport, right?
Yeah.
which is why you're like, why do you do what you do, Jen? I teach you life skills so that you could, because when the sport is gone, I don't want to say you're dropped, but it's pretty close. I injured out of my sport and I never felt so dropped like a hot cake in my whole life. I was like, where'd everybody go? But they were all busy doing their thing. They were all busy staying in what it is that we all did together. And I got left behind and it broke my heart. And I was like, I never want another person to go through this again, right? So I have this sensitivity to what happens after sport's over, right? And that's why I drive this sense of like, please let me train you on some coaching with some life skills. You got to train it because you're going to get there and be like, I don't know what to do. And it could be so much easier, but you're talking about like in the moment, we're still playing and women aren't compensated properly or protected properly during maternity leave or breastfeeding or really? We are producing people over here, people.
We are producing people and we can't pay for those people because we're entertaining you, but we're not being compensated. It
gets really messy really fast.
Yeah, it's a complicated web, like you said, and I think it's wonderful that we're starting to see athletes step up and be their own advocates, and also rope in, like other corporations and other institutions that are saying, wait a sec, you're right. You're right. Oh, you're right. And they look at the bottom line and they're like, oh wait, they're people. Oh, ugh.
Well, check it out. They're learning what we learn, that the system that you use for sport doesn't always work and often doesn't work when you apply it to other circumstances, when you apply it to HR, to pay, to equality, to diversity, to you name it. You can't put your head down and just go through that stuff.
Yeah.
You have to stop and learn and talk about it, right? And this role of the athlete that you're bringing up, I wonder what people think is the role of the athlete. Like, what is an athlete's role? And I want everybody to go crazy typing in the chat and like throw in your comments, get it in there, because I really am curious what you think, because the things that are becoming a role are that, like you said, athletes can speak up for themselves, that athletes can have opinions too and stand up for others, and that organizations who support, employ, and generally promote athletes can listen to them. Those three things are huge differences in the role. Yeah?
Absolutely. I think we're rewriting it. That's what we're seeing. I think that we are seeing the
the
recalibration of what an athlete is, how we support them as a larger society, and really look at what we've created, because I think if we tie this even to the bigger picture of the political system that we have created, in the United States in general, I'm sure it's probably transferable to all the other ones as well, but there's been that this is the way we do things, these are the blinders, these are the things that we do, and then we run and just like the work hard, right? That the workhorse and the work hard of okay, here we go. These are the things that I need to do. These are how I make this happen. And then you look up and you're like, wait, things are different. Things need to change, but that would take way too much effort, Jen. That would take way too much effort to take responsibility or put us at risk, right? Like to say, oh shoot, I didn't realize what was happening and how this has played a part in the whole. And I think that's where we're at right now with politics. I think that's where we're at with COVID. I think that's where we're at in athletics. I think that's where we're at in policing. I think, we're really at this stop where we've all like been woken up from this, like the go and the patterned behavior, right? Again, tying it back up, the patterned behavior of where we have been, and that familiar past of like, oh, we're always looking into the past saying, oh, how do we recreate? And then all of a sudden we got hit with this crazy COVID thing, and then everything stopped, and then we go, oh,
it all still works. Even though it looks janky and broken, there's
You're
a lot of
like,
stuff that's still working.
like, whoa, we are in this really strange place. Oh my gosh, we have the ability to create a future, to make changes, to re-articulate everything, not only how we, in again, all of the different areas. We have the opportunity to re-know and re-articulate what's going on. And that takes advocacy, and that takes people standing up, and that takes people having really uncomfortable conversations about the way that things used to be and the new way, whether, it's a hybrid. It's always a hybrid of,
like music. There's only 8 notes in the scale. Like there's only 8 notes in an octave, right? And you can move that octave up and down the piano, but no matter where you are, every song you've ever heard is made of the same 8 notes, A through F. Like that's it. That's all there is. So you'll always have these pieces of the past that come with you. It's how you use them. It's what you do with them, right? And where you go with them. And sometimes I think in imagery, and I had these 2 images as you were talking. One of them is this idea that what many of us know in sport, now if this has changed, so don't hold me to this 100%, but what many of us know in sport, let's say 80% of what we know and do as sport has come from the person before us. And that came from the person before them, and that came from the person before them. It's almost more of an apprenticeship program, sports is, than anything else, any other type of profession. We've added certifications for our coaches and education requirements for our athletes and exercise science to help us train smarter. Thank God for Jack LaLanne making baseball players lift weights in the 30s or 40s, whenever it was, and they looked at him like he was crazy. I can't lift weights. I won't be able to swing a bat. You're going to swing it better, actually. Right? So all of these things have evolved, but the majority of what we do is just this story being passed on from one person to the next, generation to generation. And when you were talking, I just saw this line of what we know is because someone came before us, taught us. And now, no disrespect to the former teachers whatsoever, but there comes a point in learning, like you said, where there's an awakening. And you get to start to use those tools yourself, and you might see a new way. And I honestly believe you should be allowed to speak up and say, there's a better way to do this, and not have to put your head down and keep going. You have the right to speak up for yourself. You have the right to have your opinion and your own lifestyle to your experience, to be an open, gay, beautiful woman and play your sport and not get docked for it somehow, right? Yeah. And to do what seems miraculous to me, to stand up and have professional sports industries listen and cancel games and stop seasons mid-play so that people can take a moment to listen and notice and maybe see, should we be doing this way? That's the normal part of learning. It's the normal part of learning. You wake up and you decide if you want to do it the same way as everybody else. And I think we're seeing, like you said, in this rewriting, that athletes don't want to do it the same way as anybody else. And that's that second image that I saw, was you're describing the box, and I just saw a fist come up through the box, right? Like straight up through the box. Like, I'm just going to see if I can, what happens if I punch the box? And I think, I don't know about anybody else, but I was pleasantly surprised to see the fist went right through. Right? And we can see it on the other side. We know you're in there. You're going to get my waggle here. I love my arms. I waved and I could tell, but I don't care. I'll wave it for you. Right? You're going to put your fist in the air. Yeah, la, la, la. You're going to put your fist in the air, and people are going to see it, and it's worth raising it. It's worth being seen. And like, that's the opportunity that's being taken now that is just mind-blowing to me. And I just could not be more proud and more elated and more joyful at the courage that people are showing, the risk that they're willing to face, and the voice that they're willing to use for themselves and others. It makes me speechless, and I just want to start hugging people.
I'm right there with you. It's so exciting to see it. And it's like one thing right after another. And I think that we're gaining in momentum, right? Yes. That and it's normalized, because before, we're talking like 2016, and before it was, you step out and, you get your hand slapped.
Yep.
But now, we're starting to see that it's starting to become normalized to be more than an athlete, to have these conversations, to bring
Yes.
these into the mainstream narrative and really shift and evolve our culture of sport and
Yes.
see where that goes. And I think that it's going to, it takes everybody having conversations like you and I are having. And, we might be off in some of these areas. I don't know. We're just having an
Somebody will correct
honest
us.
and
It's all right.
authentic conversation. And that's okay too, right? Like, Deanna, you messed up on it. Okay, cool. Great.
Fact
Learning
check us, people.
opportunity.
Do it.
Please do it. Do it. But even like this conversation between us can spark another conversation that sparks another conversation. And that's when the awakening happens. That's when we become more conscious. That's when we can, in our own little ways, right? Because it's not about, like a huge, big shift. It's about all of these small little fists. It's about all of those small little things. And we're starting to see it now. The collective power of the athlete voice. Imagine if only 1%, 2%, 3% of that audience starts to hear it, and then they start to talk about it. And then we start to see even more. And you know what? It's going to be messy, and it's going to be really messy for a while. But I think that's part of the process. And that's part of the beauty, is being able to really iron out and have these beautiful conversations that, again, have not historically been comfortable for people, because it challenges your belief system, or how you viewed things before, or how you've identified, or how you've put things or people or different things into boxes, or how things should be. And we're really met with this opportunity of, how do we want them to be? What can we create? What can we create together? And I don't know about you, but I am stoked to find out.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited
for the ride.
I'm so excited to see what happens when you marry the bravery and the courage, really. So let's call it the strength, which I include bravery and courage, the strength of an athlete, with their voice and their self-worth. When you put those three things together, okay, the bravery and courage that's made you stick to this servitude of sport and take the hard path and do the work, and for you to see your worthiness not only on that path, but in every space beyond it, and add your voice to that. It feels totally unstoppable.
It feels unstoppable. Imagine that. And we've made it full circle.
Absolutely. It feels totally unstoppable. I will do my own end zone happy dance, because for athletes to release the fear of loss of their sport, that's that in of itself. Like, if you can release that at all, challenge yourself to do it, right? That's the birth of you are more than an athlete. And then you connect your voice, and then you stand up for yourself, and then you see that organizations are responding positively. People, we could go anywhere from here. We can go anywhere from here. And like you said, I'm just going to reiterate, and it might be the last thing I say, we are the designers. We are the creators of that map from here on out.
And I think we do that together, right? Like,
absolutely.
we don't operate in a bubble. We are in community. And, I am so grateful for you, what you're doing, being an ally, having these beautiful conversations, and being able to connect, to collaborate, to do really cool things together. I know we've got a couple of cool things that we're going to do together that we'll be pushing out. And
the integration is coming.
It's coming. It's all coming. All the big things are coming. We're doing cool things. But, to really, again, tie this together, I want to encourage people to have the tough conversations, to interact with others around you, and for the athletes who are in the position where they're still trying to figure out if they should step out, be brave, be courageous, and work on that and marry that self-worth, because again, that's going to create an unstoppable energy that's going to flow throughout your team, throughout the audience and your fans, and then cycle and continue to swirl around and create an up-leveling of everything.
Yes.
And it's time for stuff to change, and it's really exciting.
And it is time, and it might take time. Like, if you're in that like athlete spot, and I'm with you on advocating, like, are you going to step out? Should you step out? Do you speak up? Where do you go with that? Sometimes you need to go in to go out, right? Like, sometimes if now's the time to pull in, which even like seasonally, we're getting to fall and that's preparation, and winter is, hunker down. So it's okay to say, I need to sit with this. But like you're saying, that's why you have the conversations. So go to your inner circle, speak within yourself, journal, do some, come to us for some mindfulness work, some ways that you can really engage with yourself to figure out, man, this is really different than anything I've ever experienced. What do I think? Because just coming up with that can take some time. That's a layer of courage. And then there's the layer of courage that says, okay, I'm going to tell other people. And I'm gonna end with this piece of the totally unrelated. This is how like things come together in the world, right? So right before we got on this call, I'm coaching the client. They're an executive for a hospital chain. That's a really, really, really heavy job right now. And one of the things she said was that there's a freedom in sharing the light bulb. And I went, okay, what does that mean? Tell me that. And it's about sharing your ideas, because like you said, this conversation will spark a light somewhere else. So if you feel a light coming on from this conversation, go share it. Turn on the next bulb. Let that go to the next bulb. And just let that light spread, because the light shines brighter when more heads are involved, when more people are talking, right? And the more we get together and the brighter that light shines, the farther it goes. It becomes exponential very quickly. So there's so much power. And I don't know if y'all ever knew you had this much power, but when you can step aside from the fear and know that your sport will go on, that you will play again, that there is so much you'll do in your life in addition to sport, because you're more than an athlete, the sky's the limit for where you go next. The sky's the limit.
And we're going to end with that, because that was so beautiful. Oh my goodness. Jen, thank you for your time, for your incredible articulation of your ideas. I am so blessed to know you, and so glad that we got to have this conversation. I know that this is not going to be our last conversation. It's probably going to be something that we do frequently now, because I think it's so necessary and needed. And honestly, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is. I can't tell you how grateful I am to find a like-minded individual that really believes athletes need this sense of support, that has put her life and soul into a business and to an idea and to a service that is there to do nothing but help athletes stay great in every walk of life. So I'm very grateful for you and your energy as well, and our friendship. So thank you.
Likewise. Well, we don't know where this is going to go, but it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Instagram. It's going to be on all the places. Do you want to share your handle? I'm sure that's important. I'm sure it'll be in there, but share your handle so people know where to get a hold of you, how to work with you, because I think that that's an important thing, because there's probably going to be people who are going to be, number one, wanting to have more conversations with you, and hopefully, So we're here to support. We're here to serve. We're here to be connectors. So if there's anything that either one of us can do and support you in your athlete journey, or help you connect, or anything that you're needing, we're excited to connect, excited to serve. Jen, what's your handles? Where can people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Move Strong Method, and you'll see a little MSM logo, the orange, red, and gray. MoveStrongMethod.com is the website. And you'll hear these words over and over, because it's Jen at Move Strong Method. So whether you email me or just visit the site and see what it's all about, or follow on Instagram just to get little tidbits here and there, everything from there's everything on there, from athlete stories to tips about coping with COVID to insights and inspirations from athlete clients. Again, it's all about advocating and supporting you and your journey. Just like you've said, and share yours as well, so that content-wise, if this is the other way around, you are.
Nice. Well, my name is Coach Deanna. I can be reached at The Winning Element. Pretty much every social media platform is at The Winning Element, and the website is BeTheWinningElement.com. Got a book, got a planner, do really cool things with athletes, a lot of one-on-one stuff, workshops, Zooms, all that fun stuff. The coolest and newest thing that I've got coming out, and that you are going to be a part of, is the online academy that is basically, I need to find a better way to say this, but a one-stop shop for all athletes at every stage of their athlete journey. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be, it brings coaches from all different sections of mind, body, beyond, and really bringing people to one place where they can get everything they need for their athlete journey. And it's going to be really cool. I'm excited. It's probably going to launch 12/12 is the maybe launch date. So follow
you're gonna check with the astrologer I told you to look at.
Yes, I need to check with the astrologer to make sure that we are in alignment with energies.
Well, you know, one of the most successful fitness corporations in the United States today started as a family-owned business who opened their clubs, both location and date, based on astrology, and that is Equinox Fitness.
Well, they are very successful, so I think
check your dates.
So I will go check my dates.
Absolutely.
To ensure that I'm in alignment with the universe.
Exactly, and so then you'll see the Move Strong work with this, which is a program of life skills performance coaching. So there is an online platform where you go through 20 weeks of coaching that's interactive in a group or with individuals. There's a whole curriculum developed for it, and then we also do individual one-on-one life skills performance coaching for athletes. So between us, we got what people need, and I can't wait to help them with you.
We're here. We're doing it. Jen, you're the woman.
Thank you, my friend. You are too.
Thank you. Thank you.